Hello, I'm going to take just a moment to talk about the bare minimum financials for an executive level business plan shown to early stage investors. So, the bare minimum in financials are going to be your sales number, and if you have a difference between hardware, software, and service, it'd be good to break it out. Sales will be the steepest line on your break even chart. Your cost of sales, not so steep, hopefully. The difference in slope between these two lines is basically your margin. This is all the things that go into making your product, not including commissions, but material, labor, and factory overhead, or overheads allocated to the factory. And it may not be much in the case of software products, and it might be a lot in the case of hardware products. And the third item is your fixed costs, or expenses as I prefer to use the term. Costs generally refer to cost of goods sold. Expenses usually refer to things below this line. Now, if you can break that into two categories, the way it's shown in financial reports, in other words, sales, general, and administrative, and research and development, that's even better. But in both cases, show your head count. And I mean, show it in terms of the number of people and use reasonable numbers, like 60,000 a year for an SG&A person, or maybe more, maybe 80,000 a year or 100,000 a year for an R&D person. These are considered fixed costs because they will continue on whether you have sales and the cost of sales that go with them or not. But most people are going to want to see a breakout between how much of this SG&A and how much of this R&D are other expenditures, including contractors and 1099 consultants and so on, versus actual W-2 employees that work for you and are on your payroll. So that's why you should show the head count. Now, those are what I call the bare essentials. I'm going to show you two examples. First, we'll look at the grocer. The grocery store might have pretty good sales, but they got pretty low margin. The difference in slope between the sales and the margin and the cost is pretty low. So the break-even point's way out here, okay? They may have whatever kind of operating expense on this chart. And the two axes, by the way, are dollars and time. And as you can see, as you move across, eventually the sales pass up the total of the fixed cost and the variable cost. That's the grocer model. Now that's nothing wrong with it, but they're going to have a lot of sales volume to make serious money. Here is the opposite end, what some call the jeweler model. The jeweler model, you might notice, has a much higher margin. And so they hit a break even much sooner. But they also have lower volume. They don't sell as much. And so to get to the same dollars in the same time period, they might not have to sell as much and can't expect to sell as much as the grocer, but they have such a high margin that it compensates for that. Notice that their break even may actually come sooner, okay, at a less dollar level and a less time level. So those are the basic essentials. Back to the overview. It's these three items: sales, cost of sales, and your fixed expenses, or as some say, fixed costs. I prefer the term fixed expenses. It would be best if you had a little backup chart, or if you can fit it on one page, that's just as well. For this, to break out your SG&A and your R&D and show in here somewhere how much of that is head count and how many heads that is, and how much of that is other expenditures, including consultants. Also, to back up just a moment, on sales, I'm showing hardware, software and service. If you have all three elements, that makes you very investable. Investors are particularly interested in ongoing service, software and service revenue, subscriptions and so on, like a lot of your software apps, because they know that the cost of sales number will eventually taper off to being almost flat, like SG&A and R&D. Okay, but break that out if you can. Break your sales into the three categories, but you can show it on your financials as one, and you can break your fixed costs into SG&A and R&D and show it that way. But at the end of the day, when it's all over, you're going to show a break-even chart that looks something like, or have the data to show a break-even chart that shows something like the grocer or something like the jeweler. And the interest here is this, quite simply. The investors want to know, how much money are we going to lose until your sales catch up? And how much money are we going to make? They're focused on this part out here. They see this as the opportunity to make a lot of money, and they see this as the opportunity to lose a lot of money. Okay? And what they want to know is this out here, this green space out here, as you move forward, is it going to make enough money to cover this? How deep does this hole go before you get to break even? And they're going to want to know that, whether it's the grocer model or whether it's the jeweler model. They see the jeweler model and they say, well, that's great. You're going to make money everywhere out here. Okay, but you're going to lose money everywhere back here. I love my use of crayons. So the question then becomes, is this a sure enough thing? Because it's going to be much lower volume than these costs which we're certain to incur. Whereas in the jeweler model, in the grocer model, they're going to look at that and say, wow, it's much more. We got to be very patient because it takes a long time to get to break even in the grocery business as you build it up. But this thing has extreme high volume, whereas the jewelry business doesn't. So to recap, it's just that. You can do everything on those break-even charts with these three pieces of information. Break out your sales into hardware, software, and service. Break out your fixed costs into SG&A and R&D. Do it on a backup page if you have to. You could probably fit it on one page. And on both of these two, show how much of that is headcount related. That's it. It's that simple. And there's no way to get through fundraising without talking to those three lines. Thanks for your time. I hope this was helpful. Bye-bye.